Okay, so if like you say, they have cloned from 1978, right?
That's when I think that they took the blood off. Now, they had to play with it, and you don't know what
so
they did
years.
as far as playing with it for, trying to decide, to make it do what it was supposed to do. They had plenty of time to work with it before they perfected it, just like with Dolly. And then Dolly was alive and there before they told us it was cloned.
Who? This individual would be, what, 30, 31 years old? 30 going on 31?
No, they
Oh,
would
no, that's assuming they did it
in 1978 because they would have had the blood samples and begin.
A little less than 30 years old.
Right.
Well, who could that be?
Well, when I started looking at, what were these things that would add up to needing to have this person in a particular area to do the things that we know supposedly the Antichrist is supposed to do? Who has the specific availability at their hands to pull something like this off? And, of course, we go back and we talk about the right of kings. And in looking at who had the shroud prior to it being bequeathed to the Vatican, the Knights Templar are who stole the shroud, which was called the Cloth of Edessa, after it was put in the wall there in Edessa by Christians.
Stole it, or were they watching it over it? Were they protecting it?
Well, unfortunately, the Knights Templar were not a Christian organization, and they were actually looking for their own, rights to secrets and histories and mysteries and all this harmonic geometry and all this kind of stuff that they were engrossed in. Again, that goes back to a lot of the things that came out of the Cain's lineage. They wanted accessibility to that particular blood because they knew, in fact, from the secret societies from which they stem from, and that being the Essenes and the Rexodias, that the blood that was on the shroud was actually healing people, and we have record of that even in the Bible, that it was you could look upon it and it would heal you. It was an image made without hands. In other words, mankind did not make that image, so therefore it was not really considered a bad thing because it was not a painted thing. It was actually something that had come from God. And so those Knights Templar knew that, and they wanted accessibility to that, and they kept that hidden for so long. And if you but
they were endorsed by the Roman Catholic Church. The Knights Templar were. Yes,
and that's another whole night of discussion we could have on that, because there's a connectability to the reason the Vaticans and the Knights Hospitallers and the Templars are all connected, and how that all funnels itself right into Hitler and his availability to have the spear of destiny that supposedly was the spear that pierced Jesus' side.
Why isn't the shroud being totally investigated? Why is it still under the control of the Vatican, and why don't they investigate it?
Well, I hate to say this, but I think it's been totally investigated, and until the time is right, just like when it was time for Dolly to be exposed, then they'll stand up with their shroud and tell you that they've given life to the image.
Will they admit that the shroud is authentic?
Yes.
Oh, they will.
They will definitely use it to admit that the being that steps into the newly built temple there in Jerusalem is, in fact, the man from the shroud. And cloning is going to get to be, in the next couple of years, you're going to start hearing more and more, just like the clone aid. They're looking for someone to come forward and show that, the cloning, we've already seen the dogs that look like the dogs and the cats that look like the cats that have been cloned, and the people, the pet owners, say that they can't tell any difference. They have the same personalities. So the image is going to live again. All
right. Are you going to tell us who you think was cloned from the shroud?
Yes, and the reason I'm that my speculation is this, is that
is this just your theory, Joy, or are there others that believe this too?
Well, I have a huge following, and so I get a lot of emails who truly believe this too, and they've been thinking these things for a long time.
I mean others who are studying this.
Yes, yes, researchers. And they truly believe, like I have, that there is a connectability to the fact that the Knights Templar and the Grail legends of King Arthur and the Holy Grail, that the Holy Grail was the chalice that held the blood, is definitely the shroud, is holding the blood. And from that, according to, the Arthurian legend, would be that the king, the once and future king, in other words, he would die and he would live again as a child. And we've seen that played out even in Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of the Christ, where Satan is carrying an old man child through while Jesus is being beaten, the blood is splattering. So there is a connectability to understand that there was a plan in the very beginning that to be in the image of Christ, when Jesus said, that your body is the temple, and when Daniel says that the abomination of desolation will be when that person stands in the temple proclaiming himself to be God, he will be standing not only in a newly built temple, but he will be standing in the very temple of God, and that's why the abomination is so bad.
So who is it, in your opinion?
When I did the tracing back, I did it through trying to find out who was trying to make their lineage look like they had connectability to King David. And unfortunately, the person that is the most connected right now to what I call the Merovingian bloodline is Prince William.
You mean the late Princess Diana's Prince William?
Yes. And that is another thing that in my book I show, that Diana was not accidentally killed in an automobile accident, that she absolutely was murdered because she was about to tell somebody about it. And really, in all the things that she did as far as tapes, interviews, she specifically kept telling people over and over, I was used as a birthing chamber. Charles never loved me. She would not even call William by his full name. She called him Wills. Why did she call him Wills? Because the last three letters of William's name is I am. And his next name is Arthur. I am Arthur. And he is from that royal lineage of that bloodline Merovingian who wanted to bring King Arthur back to life.
So you're saying that Prince William looks identical to what Jesus looked like?
Oh, yes. I would encourage people that are listening tonight to go to my website, and we have absolutely measured his face, his body,
put it all the same, huh?
everything, and it matches to a T.
Did you put a beard on him?
Oh, he's got a beard now. He's actually helped us out a little bit on that. In fact,
have you confronted him about this?
No, I haven't confronted him. I wondered if he was going to give me a call, but I don't think he will.
Even know? Does he even know? Because they say the Antichrist doesn't even know who he is.
Well, there's a connectability. There's a parallelization to this. In 2012, William will be 30 years old. That's when the Mayan calendar says that the serpent will come down from the sky and come down to earth.
Man,
when Jesus was 30 years old.
That's wild, Joy. That's wild. We'll be back in a moment. We'll open up the phone lines now on Coast to Coast AM.